Good morning, everybody. What I would like to take you through is the context of the environment. I've anchored it on data generation because I think that's an element that really makes the difference between trying to convince and having something that convinces. Being de-risked and being more comfortable to address your investors. But this actually sets on the entire environment, so I want to take you through that. But before we go there, I wanted to talk to you about Malcolm Gladwell, who's actually an author that I like very much, and he wrote a book saying, Blink, which is the first impression gives you a lot of information. The last meeting that I came across this very good friend of mine, I arrived at the meeting the day before, and we were talking, and he told me, terrible, nothing has happened, we're working on fumes. The same person I met yesterday, and he told me, well, I may have something. I think this is the sense of the environment. We may have something, and I would like us to go away with that. But that we may have something fits on a lot of context that I would like to give you today, so I'll give you my perspective on that context. This will be the areas I'll touch base. Some of it you're very familiar, others are a little bit controversial, and some of them are a bit of my pet projects because I believe they are crucial for the field. And I'll stress one of those that I think is important for us. I think the value that we bring to patients is enormous. But we should not be dazzled only by the science. We need to understand how to make that really a business. And that's one of the things I'll come back to. So, what about the sector? I think getting money is challenging, but I think it's improving. We have some issues about clinical development, but we're definitely looking for alternatives where we do them. This is the geography of cell and gene therapy is moving, and I'll come back to that point. And we do have some regulatory challenges, and I'll come back down onto the FDA specifically, as well as Europe as a comment. We all know about the fantastic thing that it is. We need to moderate our enthusiasm. We all do the glue sniffing. I mean, we're all around ourselves convinced of what we're doing. We need to understand that we sit in a broader environment and understand the expectations about it. The regulatory outlook is strong. I mean, there's potentially been some slowness over last year. There's definitely some challenges on regulatory specifically. I'll come back to them. But we're getting products approved. But are we getting them as commercialized as they should? That's probably the question. I mean, I had to do a little bit of marketing. I mean, please come and go and have the information you may want at the ISCT, and you'll be able to get the documents that we publish and give you more detailed information about the field than it's needed here today. But where are we really? I think there's a certain degree of uncertainty. We've been on a winter of biotech that continued on 25. I hope it is changing for 26. I think we need to have a realistic optimism about 26, and it's up to us to be realistic, but also be optimistic. Why? We need to manage our expectations, but we also need to create a certain sense of optimism, of enthusiasm around it, because enthusiasm can be contagious, and I think it's up to us to drive that contagiousness. I will come back to the geographies and the modalities of investment, as well as where to do business. I'll particularly come back to the point about China, where I've been a lot recently, and the fact that I think it's unavoidable to consider it, and I'll come back to that point. So the sentiment in 25 was a sentiment of people being worried. You can see there that the majority of CEOs in 25 were worried about the environment. And this was a endpoints survey. They do it always at the beginning of the year, so 25 was seen as a tough year. If we look at what comes in 26, it has changed. It has changed, and people are looking at a regaining of the optimism. It goes through a series of other elements on the analysis, but I took just the gist. You know, that psychology that CEOs approach business with. And he was not very positive in 25, was worried in 25, and is changing in 26. Let's see how it continues. And obviously, one thing that was included in the question is, what about China? I mean, the other day I was talking as well, and I mean, the company I run, we're doing an investigator-initiated study in Europe. And maybe a year or two ago, when I was talking to investors and saying, I'm doing an investigator-initiated study, investors have said, we don't like that. I mean, that's not good. We're not supporting that. Probably if you talk to investors today, they may ask you, when do you start your investigator-initiated study? And they may actually ask, and where are you doing it? What about China? I think that this is obviously an evolving situation. I think that the investors like to follow the other investors, but we also want to follow where they want to go. But above all, we need to go where the opportunity is and why that opportunity is significant for our companies. And I actually do think that there is reasons to believe on the funding environment. I think it's also probably more a business of pharma and M&As and BD, and we saw some of that discussion. I think the VCs, the equity funding, is probably still a little bit worried as money. They want to go for more de-risked, hence the clinical trial and the data generation. They go for potentially less risk. I mean, it's easy to fund a company that has strong clinical data. It's probably more important to take a bet on a preclinical, well-documented, well-supported, well-managed project, because that's where the risk is bigger, the reward is more important, and that's above all, and that's one of the things I strive for, innovation comes from. But whatever we say, it's down to eating of the pudding that is really important, which is commercial success is needed. And we have seen some commercial success in terms of blockbusters, in terms of really growth, but probably depending on how you see it, that commercial success may not be as striking as one we would like. I mean, it's an emerging field. It starts like most of the fields in small patient indication, rare diseases. That distorts the assessment. It needs to evolve to larger indications, but we need to make sure, and this is probably the most important message here, whatever you do, think about how you're going to sell your product. And sell is a combination of multiple things. It's actually making sure that the patient gets it and gets it appropriately. But in the end, it's a transaction element, it's a commercial element, it's a business model success that reinforces the investment. Obviously, I think we all here believe in what cell and gene therapy. Let's actually rejoice a little bit about it. But let's not forget that we're, again, part of a broader picture. We're seeing some progresses in solid tumors, the CAR-T advances, and some flexibility increase on the use of the CAR-T is important, even though a new business model is needed. And obviously, in vivo is dazzling everybody, but it's really becoming already just a bit of story of the past. It's really how do we manage it from safety, from deployment, from business model, and all of that. And more will come. Because of the unmet medical need and the dazzling efficacy, regulatory approval is fairly well supported, and I think the regulators have grown with us in the field. And I will welcome seeing us growing more and more to more prevalent diseases, and they are coming down the road. There's a few there. I'm particularly attracted on what Lily then put the bet on in terms of going for a gene approach to a large prevalent disease. I think we still have not really woken up how we're going to do this. Do we want to have a gene treatment for a very large prevalent disease, and how do we go about it? Can we have the right model for it? I think we will eventually do. I'll bring back the point about gene therapy and the ethical element to it, which is one of my, let's call it pet projects, one of the things I'm very, very keen on. But for the somatic gene therapy that we're talking about, this is a fantastic opportunity. It will become vulgarized. It will become an opportunity to treat large prevalent diseases, but we need to understand how we go about it and how do the evolution of that model. We're seeing more and more the adoption of the autologous approach. We desperately need an evolution of the business model for the autologous approach. This is a must-do. Another thing that tells me, back to my point in the beginning, at the second conversation I had yesterday was on the lift with another very good friend saying a new business model for the autologous approach is a must-do. We need that. So that's another call for urgency. We all know about autoimmune. The jury's still out. How is that going to be? But is definitely convinced of the benefit. So it's really how we deploy and how do we manage. And I think another call is there's huge, fantastic innovation, but there's also huge, fantastic, potentially well-established technologies that can really be harnessed and deliver a lot of value still. The in vivo, we spoke about it. It is indeed the way to go for a lot of these indications, because it really deploys, let's call it, the manufacturing inside. But again, as I said, we need to get our mind well adapted to it. And obviously the regulatory approach and the fact that we need to think differently about this gene defect pathologists, and the regulators are doing so, and we saw that not only in this particular case, but also on the publication, I'll come back to that came out from the FDA, really highlighting that there is an opportunity to play together with the regulators. We've seen on the FDA, and I'll use the FDA here as an example because we're here, and we have seen a series of leadership statements with the right movement, the right intentions. Are those stated intentions being translated in actions? Probably not always, and we've seen some actions that really contradict that intention, and that's probably where the challenge is. Is that related to the talent? Is that related to the FDA being adequately staffed? We need to rebuild that bridge between us and the FDA, and we need to understand their positioning about methodological approaches. Because it's probably one thing to say that there's once flexibility, while on the other side, then it becomes stricter on some of the criteria for the assessment. The two don't compute. We need to get the right balance. But we only get the right balance if we talk, and we can only talk if we are able to establish those bridges. And that's something that we're all really making the effort for, because I do believe that there is overall good willingness and intention to support cell and gene therapy because of the benefit that it comes, understanding the regulatory and business model challenges. So, product translation, I wanted again to give you another example, another comparison. I don't know if you've seen in Netflix the Three-Body Problem series, which is a scientific fiction book, actually written in China, interestingly enough, where we cannot predict the trajectory of 3 bodies, even if we know the 3 positions of them at a certain point because of the complexity, 3 celestial bodies. I want us to think about cell and gene therapy in a slightly different way, a slightly different way of classifying products in cell and gene therapy, focused on the product concept that leads to the business model approach. We have the autologous, where we see the ex vivo gene editing of the cells back to the patient. That is a very much manufacturing dependent process, one patient, one batch manufacturing dependent approach. The in vivo, which is really very much in line with the traditional business model of pharma. It's a product that you inject, and obviously you get the outcome. I mean, to make it simple. And the allogeneic, where you optimize the source of the cells, and obviously iPSC comes to mind, and then you engineer the cells to optimize their function. And that is actually also compatible with an off-the-shelf traditional business model with some additional complexities in terms of the sensitivity of the product, but that's really easy to handle. And so it's also suitable for a traditional business model. The point here is think about your product. What is the business model that it requires? How are you going to deploy it? Because that's how you're going to ensure commercial success. And so from the autologous, alternative manufacturing with automation close to the patient, decentralized manufacturing, it's a must. We need to rethink this. Otherwise, we're going to erode the opportunity that autologous products deliver to patients, and they will continue to deliver. We cannot predict the trajectory, back to my analogy, but we know that the value is there, and we need to continue to harness that value, but it requires a new approach. The gene in vivo, it comes with the challenges of understanding what happens, multiple edits, targeting the cells, you know, all of that, but that's really just a matter of doing it. We'll get there. And really this will be a mainstream of activity. And again, if you go for the allogeneic, it becomes also manufacturing dependent, but it is multiple patients from a batch. It is the traditional model. And I think this will also be what we would really think about cell and gene therapy, because you still use a cell, but you engineer it and you optimize it to really deliver a therapeutic benefit. So focus on your product, focus on your TPP, as you all know, and then focus on how you're going to commercialize it. And if we think about these 3 buckets, it probably will help us. And I think we need to think of it even before the product exists, because really it's the end in mind that needs to be in our mind. And you can see I've written a couple of editorials about this. The one that just came out in Mednows, really just trying to, it's not to reinvent a classification, but crystallize our minds as we generate the data. Now, the world is fun, and there's a lot happening. And definitely the geopolitical environment in the US and Europe is changing, and because of that, China is taking advantage. And I think we really need to navigate that well. It's not just how you think about your product, but also where do you think about your product, and with whom do you think about your product. I talked about the FDA. In Europe, there's a conscious effort in terms of improving the competitiveness of Europe. I think, again, taking opportunity of the evolving scenario, but also taking responsibility of waking up, like Europe needs to wake up to a lot of things, and it's waking up to the competitiveness of biotech. And the European Biotech Act that was published not long ago, and is now under discussion with the Parliament, is doing several things. Probably the most important one is the 4 there, regulatory simplifications, which is important. I mean, we have a multi-stakeholder decision process in Europe, and I've been involved in it. I was a regulator. I was part of the European agency. I know that is good science, good regulatory, but slow and checks and balances process. That we have several biotech hubs, and we need to get a network. And the Commission actually just issued a call for support and funds to promote biotech hubs across Europe. Again, recognizing that we do things better if we do them together. We cannot avoid AI. And there is also an alternative. The European Investment Bank and the Commission are making efforts on the investment. And I made the case to them that where the investment is needed is really on the translation, where we get an idea, academia-based, and want to have a product, industry to develop. This really where funding, flexible, small amounts, rapid decision, funding that enables you, like a seed investment, to really do a proof of concept, and then you will have VCs lining up at the door to support your clinical supported or clinical documented project. And I think this will come as part of that European Biotech Act and part of that European competitiveness. But the geography is evolving. I had deals with Chinese companies 2 or 3 years ago, and I've gone back now recently, and I've seen fantastic deployment of quality and efficient product development and intention to be a world player, and an intention that is allowed to happen and making them a significant partner. And again, something that it will come out in another editorial very soon. My point is we need to do a competitive collaboration or a collaborative competition, taking advantage of where we can learn and collaborate, keeping in mind that we do that for the sake of the patient always, but also for the sake of the competitiveness of our company, our geography, and our sector. And it is a global environment. It's changing. It's being recognized. I mean, I could not do a presentation without having those players and images of those players on my presentation anyway, because they really represent what's happening, and we need to understand what's happening, navigate that, so that we're able to do our business as company leaders. And so for that, we need new models, new approaches, from all the way regulatory to clinical generation of data, to how we do the business models and we do deploy. And for that, there is an evolving geography. There's a shifting towards Asia. And why is that so? Because on a translational needs, we need good science, we need talent, we need resources. Everybody says that's what gets companies invested. And you then need to generate the data. And you need to decide how do you do your proof of concept as a phase 1/2 or an IIT, as part of initial steps of clinical development. And you need to decide how you do it, how to fund it, and where you're going to do it. You probably noticed that I have a bias for the Lisbon estuary there with the images. I mean, I cannot help the bias of my own countries, but I hope you enjoy the pictures behind. But the point is, the company creation and clinical trial execution is exploding in Asia versus the US, and nearly slow, stagnant in Europe. That has been recognized in Europe. That has also been admitted in the US. And that is being really taken advantage of in China. And I think we need to really surf on this. In other words, acknowledge it, try to not necessarily object to it, but really take advantage of it and make sure that we surf it, and then that collaborative competition that I mentioned to you. You can go and see the details, but if you look here, there is a strong component of Asia-Pacific on the clinical trials, and there's also a strong component of IIT, in other words, non-industry clinical trials. So the data generation is slightly changing. It doesn't mean that you have less control. You have the right risk-benefit assessment, and it's important. I mean, as a clinician, as a product developer, as a regulator, as anyone that cares about patients, the decisions of a risk-benefit must always be done before you go into the clinic. But you need to understand that there's ways of being more flexible about your CMC, about how to assess the patient. You really need to be nimble and fast for the patient's sake to actually do the development of your product, which will reflect on your company as well. And you will see that the geography then is really evolving into Asia Pacific, as well as more academic based or investigator-initiated studies. Ethics has been one of my concerns as president of ISCT, and I wanted just to leave a quick message here. Ethics goes all the way to making sure this product gets approved and paid for, because we have an ethical responsibility for patients to be treated. But on gene therapy, somatic is fantastic. Germinal, in other words, heritable human gene editing, is something that is coming, people are talking about. We do not have the ability, technical ability, to make the right risk-benefit decisions about that today. And so we have ASGCT, ISCT, ARM, and others took a position on a moratorium, and that is actually being challenged also by some commercial approach. I do think that we will have down the road an opportunity for right use of HGE, but that's not today. And I think to be able to use it appropriately in due course for us, part of our evolutionary responsibility, we need to not do it today until we know how to do it properly. And that is the thesis that we have on the publication that we came out, and the activities that we continue to do. And we'll come back to this a lot at the annual meeting in Dublin at ISCT. Now, what do I want you to take home? We're transforming lives. I mean, our own lives, because we tried to get investment and it doesn't happen very quickly, and that really transforms our lives. But we're transforming lives of the patients, and that is rewarding. That's what we do. And you said it before, that's what we're doing it for. And we're seeing fantastic examples that really keep us going for it. Don't forget that. This is where we want. And treating patients, I go back, it depends on all the way you get to the right business model to make sure that deployment, provision, distribution, treatment, launch the product adequately. I mean, it's not because a product works that the physician and the patient will use it. It's because we educate them how to use them appropriately and explain to them the benefits and the downsides of using it appropriately. Launching a product ensures adoption. Adoption ensures patient treatment, and that ensures return on investment and the sustainability of what we do. So, focus on the product, focus on the business model, do it with end game in mind. Think about where you're going to do it and where's the commercial uptake. Resilience is something that we must have, and control, not avoid, but control risk aversion, and go where your company needs to go with a strong sense of urgency. Thank you.